Tees4Togo TV. This is the show where I interview the artists involved with my t-shirt company, Tees4Togo. Each shirt we sell sends a girl in Togo, West Africa to school for an entire year. Today I'll be interviewing artist and musician Adee Roberson, who designed the Chuck D shirt. Let's get at it. I'm here with Adee Roberson, who designed this shirt, which I love. It's one of my favorite shirts in the collection, and it's the one most often worn at my home by the entire family. So I love my shirt. So I guess I was going to start by asking you a little bit about what you're working on now, because you were talking about doing music right now, and that you're doing the xylophone. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the xylophone.
It's called a Jill. I actually only took like 2 lessons. My plan was to take like all these lessons, but I haven't actually done it. But yeah, I've been like on a deep musical journey, like really during the whole quarantine, just kind of really thinking about just like such an expansive array of music, just listening to so much music. It's been really helpful for me. And so it's almost like I've been taking in all of this like music information, and like I'm really excited to like put some stuff out, but I'm like moving very slow. So I'm going to do some of that this weekend. When I go out of town, I'm going to bring my music stuff and I'll be by myself and I'll do that. And then some in my studio. I just did a performance at Coaxial. Like they were doing these Saturdays streaming things. Like it's a video experimental art space. And so I did like kind of a sound healing thing where I played synth and then recorded singing bowls. And it was like maybe like 20 minutes of that. And then with the Jill, I am taking lessons here with SK Kakraba. He's a Ghanaian musician who lives here in LA, and he's been here for like 10 years or something. And the Jill, it's an instrument, it's a xylophone, and it's got gourds below it, and the holes in the gourds are covered with spider egg sacs, and there's water inside of the gourds. So it kind of sounds like electronic, like it has a buzzing sound, but it's a traditional instrument that he plays. He's Lobi, and he plays it, they play it at like funerals and like naming ceremonies and stuff like that. I just thought it was really amazing because obviously it's like a traditional instrument, but it's like very like futuristic. So I wanted to like also like try that. And then in doing that and playing, it's like tonal, and I think it's like tuned to their language. And so in doing that, thinking about tones and how like there's not just the westernized toning or tuning of an instrument, but there's like all these other ways to tune instruments and all these other ways to do sound. So it felt really cool to do like the traditional like West African instrument. But I think there's like, it's played in other places in Africa too, not just West Africa, but I think it might be called different things in other places. I'm not quite sure.
Interesting, it's from West Africa because Togo is in West Africa.
Yeah.
The t-shirts go to benefit, young women's education. And now several of the students have gone to college. I think there's like 8 or 10 now, just from Tees4Togo starting and being able to donate money, that they've gone beyond just sending kids to, the lower grades in high school and into college now. So yeah.
Because they cost, and talking to my friends there, because I was in West Africa last summer. Yeah, I'm like so out to lunch because I'm American, but it's like, yeah, you gotta pay for school, like, and it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, to a lot of people here, it's like $40 is nothing, but to send a kid to school for a year. That was my plug. But I wanted to ask you about your process, and this could be about art, it could be about music, it could be about film. So it's a little open-ended. And I know each project is different, each day is different, each minute is different. But I'm interested in, like, lately, have you been going into your work sort of like, I don't know what's going to happen, I want to try some formal ideas, or I want to work with this one instrument, or I want to work with this one medium I haven't been working in that much, like more of a formal kind of thing? Or are you coming at it with like, here's these ideas I'm working at, and you do research behind it? Or like, I'm just interested in your process.
Yeah, I think the process is it's kind of all over the place. For specifically for the shirt, then that's like a project. You hit me up, and then it's like we had the image, and then I went and risographed. Like I uploaded the images, and I picked like trying to do it in various colors, and I collaged it and used the risograph. I didn't screen print with that one. Sometimes I like will test things out by screen printing, but at that time, um, I was really like playing around with the reso. And so that's kind of how I did that. And then, yeah, I think it just depends on if it's specific projects, then I kind of just focus on that. But if it's like my own timing, which kind of is right now, I'm just just like putting out stuff. So I'll go from like painting something in the studio to researching like a person or like music, and then like working on music in the studio too, and like reading for a little bit. And like it's kind of like all over the place, even within like one day. I like painted a lot last year, and I didn't really do much music. And now I've been like haven't been painting at all this year. But I did so much last year that it's kind of fine. And then I've been just focusing on like music and meditation, and yeah, kind of trying to research and learn other things. So,
Speaking of meditation, I was just thinking about the process of making, and how a lot of your work is really, of your paintings especially, are really labor intensive and a lot of detail work, and it's like it seems like they take a long time.
yeah, it's really meditative, and for me, it's about channeling. And so like it's good to be in kind of a meditative state to do it. It's meditative in a like frustrating way. Sometimes there's things I need to get out, like there's stress and like anxiety, and I can tell the difference between those paintings and then the ones that are like more like relaxed. um and so it's just like kind of like for an emotional release.
It seems like also if you're working on like a big painting that involves a lot of pattern, I mean, from what you're saying, it's almost like it could be sort of a way to take your own temperature of where you're at when
Hmm.
you go into work at it, to see like, you know, like meditation does, where it's like sometimes you can't calm yourself down at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or you know what I mean? Like it must be really interesting to work on a really large scale piece with small details and just be like, I'm having a really hard time with this. I'm having a really hard time focusing on this. I want, you know what I mean? Like I want to let go, or I can't let go. Or
Yeah.
to me, that part of your work is really fascinating, is that I think so many of the finished products are so beautiful and stunning and I love. And then to think about the process of it, and it also reminds me of meditation and reminds me of healing. I had this really weird thing I kept thinking of when I was writing out questions for you, and I know that this is a super bizarre one, but I was thinking of that because I've never done installation work, and a lot of your work ends up being installation, like the way that you have a huge painting with a drum set. Your work takes up a lot of space. You can stand inside of it, and it reminded me a lot of music and how it surrounds you,
Yeah.
and how you're kind of like you're creating this sonic space, and then you're creating this visual space.
Yeah.
And if there's anything to say about it, I don't know. I just was really wondering what it feels like the difference standing on stage, performing, like
Yeah.
playing drums especially, and the music surrounding you and the music surrounding the audience. And then what it feels like when you've installed your work and then you're standing in there. Like I'm just interested in the contrasts of the feeling.
I think with the live stuff, I actually been missing it so much lately. And actually right before quarantine, I started a band with a few people. um, and it was fun to like play drums with other humans. I was like, whoa, I haven't done this in so long. And I think the difference between that is like when you're actually physically, yeah, on stage and you're interacting with people like in that moment, the vibrations are going out, like your voice is going out, the sound of the drums is going out, the sound of the instruments is going out to people. It's just like the energy is really like fulfilling in this way that I think sometimes like in a gallery setting, after you've installed and you've done all that stuff, it's like people come to like observe it, but there's not much of the interaction. And um I think I really miss that about playing music and playing specifically also with people, like where you're like playing with people and then there's people there and we're all like engaging with each other based on sound. And it's just like really, it feels like it's hyper generative. Yeah, when I was playing with the New Bloods, it was like we were all going through so much emotionally. It was like I moved from New Orleans 3 months before Katrina happened, and then Cassia, the bass player, like she went through Katrina, like she went through it and randomly ended up living down the street from me in Portland, and we were friends in New Orleans. And then like I don't know how this happened. We were like on MySpace or something, and we were like, I was like, how are you? Like, I'm in Portland right now. And she's like, whoa, I'm in Portland too. Where do you live? And I was like, I live on Killingsworth. She's like, whoa, I live on Killingsworth. And then it was like, should we be in a band together? It's like, okay. And like, we had been through so much. And I think it was another case of like channeling, and the energy was so like intense and like heightened to move through all of those kind of traumatic things that have happened. I think that was kind of when you're engaging with other people in that way. Yeah, so maybe that's the difference between like, yeah, engaging with people and then just kind of people going into something and observing something, you know.
It feels very musical to me, a lot of your work. I can sense the music in it, and I know you've named a lot of the paintings after songs or
Yeah.
and you also have work that has famous and lesser known and just important artists, typically Black artists, all Black artists, I think, in your paintings. And I was wondering about the whole idea of like the Recuperative Project and recuperating lost heroes, recuperating people who never got their due in your work, and if that figures into it.
That does figure into it. And the first, like, I think the first images that I used, like in the very beginning of making like kind of the collage ones, were actually like other punk musicians. Like I made one with the Raincoats, and then like a reggae singer, and I think Osa from New Blood still has it. Like, and I made that, but it was also for making zines and like the cut and pasting of stuff. And then slowly, I started going the trajectory of doing like kind of lesser known like Black singers, specifically because I was just listening to a lot of reggae, and there were a lot of really amazing vocalists who were like, they were the studio vocalist, like harmonizer for Studio One in Jamaica. And it was like I always do this piece of Jennifer Lara because I think she has such a beautiful voice, and she was like that person that was always called on to like be in session there to harmonize with stuff, to do stuff. And then she had her own solo career, but she's not like, she has these like gems of songs that are just like mind blowing, and her voice is mind blowing, but she's not someone who's like, you know, in popular culture, but her music really resonated with me. So then I felt like I kind of just went on that trajectory. And then more of the recent stuff has been more of like family photos. And I think like, because there's, I mean, specifically in my family, a lot of the images will be of other like Black people, Black women, and kind of what they went through that kind of goes unseen, that people like do so much. Like when I think about all like my mom being like a single parent at 17, and the work that it takes to like to be like a teenager and like actually have to take care of a whole ass baby, and like also work and go to school. And like, you know, my grandmother moved here from Jamaica in like the late 50s or some shit, and I'm just like, I can't even like picture how much like strength and energy that took to do all of that. And so I want to like really like kind of commemorate those people in my family for those are the simple everyday things that people do, and it might not be a big deal to like them, even like they're like, oh whatever, I just did it. But for me, I'm like, ooh, I don't like, I haven't done any of that shit. I feel like I'm such like a wimp compared to them. So, and I also wanted to do it for my like family, because for them to see themselves in that and to be like, whoa, you like did this thing and it's huge. My aunt and my mom came to visit me when I had a show at Palm Springs Art Museum last year, and I didn't tell them like what was in the show, and they came. My aunt was like, oh my God, we're in the show. And she was so happy, and she was just like just like couldn't believe it. And my aunt is like so cool. She's like a nurse. She's like a nurse practitioner, and she lives in South Florida, and she's just such a kind person. And I just wanted to like do something nice for them, to just be like, you guys are amazing, you know.
That's so sweet. My mom's always trying to get in everything I do. Like she's like, oh, can I sing backups? Can I be in the video? But then if I ask her to, she won't do it.
Oh.
I know. I've always been curious about I hope you don't hate talking about New Bloods, because I know sometimes it's like
God.
people always harp on it, but
If it was
um,
5 years ago, I would be like, but now I'm, I mean,
no,
old
well,
enough.
because when you get a certain more longer past it, that it's like okay. Um, I was wondering what other bands were influencing you during that time period.
Essential Logic for sure, and X-Ray Specs, like those were, and the Sliths, which now and sometimes it can feel a little problematic, but at the time it was like such a huge influence because it was like a reggae punk
Yeah.
thing, and we were all into that. And like Gang of Four, like a lot of the like England like post-punk, like all of that stuff we were all really into, but also into like Afrobeat and reggae and like all of, yeah, all of that kind of stuff. Like I feel like at that time there were all these like reissues coming out of like Nigerian high life and like um old reggae and like dancehall albums and stuff. So we were also into that as well as kind of, and I feel like a lot of the like those bands from England were all listening to that stuff too, or like growing up around it. So it kind of made sense that they all like connected, and it felt like we were kind of bridging that gap because we're like actual Black people in a punk band. So it was like we were able to just like intuitively kind of bring that energy to the music. But those were like what we were listening to. Like I mean, I still love Essential Logic. I also love like Erase Errata too, and like a lot of the stuff on Kill Rock Stars we all listen to, you know. So we were like stoked when we got on the label too.
I mean, I was also like Kleenex and Delta 5 and
Oh yeah.
stuff like that, that I hear in it. And then it is so interesting to be like, oh, these are a bunch of white people who are being influenced by, music outside of their own culture.
Yeah.
And then they were taking it and made this thing. And then to have a band of Black women who are, with everybody wasn't Black in the band.
No, there's one white woman
There's
in
one
the
white
band. Yeah,
person, right?
Cassie is white, yeah.
Yeah. But to have Black women who are making music being like influenced off the copy and
Yeah,
then going back to the original is
yeah.
kind of fascinating
That
trajectory.
happens a lot. Yeah, I think that happens a lot with music. It's like
Mhm.
people, like there's the whole thing where like Chicago House happened and like someone somehow like brought like tapes or like to or records of it and put it all on tapes in South Africa, and then like cab drivers like started playing like Chicago house in South Africa, and now South Africa has like a whole house music scene. But then like, or it's like a whole like people listen to house music there all the time, but they have it like their own kind, and then it like then it goes back to here. It's like there's like this like kind of circular thing that can sometimes happen with.
So I wanted to talk about Say Her Name into the Ocean. And I know there's like victims of white supremacy, of police brutality, like Sandra Bland in that piece. And I wanted to talk about the importance of art that engages with like a white supremacist world, but still is really colorful and joyful.
I had a very like hard time just making that piece. It was just like in a place of grief. It was just like so much going on in that. But I wanted to like do this thing to like to commemorate or like yeah, also to like these people who were like yeah, these Black women who obviously I'm sure did a bunch of miraculous things in their life, but really to like commemorate that. So the piece was really hard for me. Like I was just really sad, obviously, and I made it, and it's kind of in a color that I never really make. Like it was like green, which I'd never like do that, but I think there was something about that also. There's a lot of times in my studio where it was like hard for me to like look at it. I was like, oh my god. And then it got bought by the Freedom School in Toronto. Like it's like a Black like a school program for Black kids, I think from like 6 to like 12 or something like that, and they wanted to have it. And for their, in their thing, they were just like, it's so beautiful and it like brings me a lot of joy. But for me, it like didn't. So it was nice for it to go to them and for like for the kids to see it and for it to be like, for Black Lives Matter Toronto to purchase the piece from me. It felt really cool to have. And yeah, I mean, it, yeah, I did that in that moment, but I don't know if I would do something like that again necessarily because it felt really hard. But I think it is good for people to like do it. I think it is like important to have people's images, and it's also like sometimes it can be also intense too. I feel like kind of like conflicted about it sometimes, but I'm glad that I did that. But I haven't
Yeah,
really
but it's
told
also not your responsibility.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know you know that, but it's like that whole thing of like, okay, you have to bear the burden of racism and stuff, and then you
Yeah.
also have to be like working to end it through your work, and all of your work has to I feel like there's like the people whose work that I really love, and you're one of those people. It's like politics are organic in it.
Yeah.
It's not an add-on or an afterthought or a
Yeah.
pre-thought or a separate thought. It's like the way that the artist whose work really like viscerally touches me, it always ends up that it's like it's in there.
Yeah.
When we were talking about the use of pattern in your work, and you were saying, oh, sometimes I like to think I'm making a modern kente cloth.
Yeah.
And that could be a real political idea
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. It could also just be like, I'm really super into kente cloth.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I don't think especially yeah, in times like especially these last years, it's really there is an expectation a lot of times if you're a Black artist to kind of only kind of speak to the grief process around that and not the rest of it. And also like um yeah, which is just always it's always happening anyways, but like that kind of like people expectations. A lot of people like having residencies now or having exhibitions where they're like, can you artists who are making some political work around Black Lives Matter or making it around this way? And I'm like, I totally think that's fine for some people, but I don't think that that's necessarily how I work because I'm always working in that. So it's not like it's like a moment or like you know, this moment because this person died, then it's like, oh, now I'm going to do it. But it's like always happening for me because it's my life. So it's like it goes like in and out of that in a different way, which, yeah.
I guess I'll end this with thanking you. I love the t-shirt. As you know, the pictures came from Jeanette Beckman, who's an amazing photographer. And Chuck loves the shirt.
Yeah.
And I'm like kind of a Chuck D nerd. like
That was
I was
amazing.
big into Public Enemy in the 90s. That's dating me a little bit. But yeah, it was really great to have three great artists kind of come together. And I love your painting so much, and it's so reflected in
Yeah.
the style. I just got a new batch in with this new brighter pink that I'm
Oh,
like,
nice.
I'm so obsessed with it. It's so good. Because on the gray, it's a little bit darker. So we went
Yeah.
brighter pink, and I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna start doing kids
That's
sizes.
what you were saying. Yeah, no, thank you so much for inviting me to do that anytime. I mean, I feel like I love to just, yeah, it was really fun for me and it was really great to feel like learn about something else that I didn't know about and like that felt like a really special way to like support it and to be a part of it. So like, thank you. That's
Well,
great.
thanks for sharing your talent and hard work. like the worst interviewer.